A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 4 through 11 and verses 16 through 20. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint for us, then, a king to govern us like other nations." But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to govern us." Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them, just as they have done to me from the day that I brought them up out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So also they are doing to you. Now, then, listen to their voice, only you shall solemnly warn them, and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So Samuel reported all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "These will be the ways of the king who reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and to run before his chariots. He will take your male and female slaves, and the best of your cattle and donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day." But the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel. They said, "No, but we are determined to have a king over us, so that we also may be like other nations, and that our king may govern us and go out before us and fight our battles." Prospectors don't get rich in gold rushes. The wealth goes to the middlemen. The California gold rush of the mid-1800s certainly played out this way. In the early days of the bonanza, a few small-time gold panners made it big, but most of the gold made its way into the hands of shovel dealers, tavern owners, dungaree purveyors, and comfort-related suppliers. After all of that, especially later on when the big mining operations got going, a small-time 49er would have made more money staying home. Levi Strauss and Wells Fargo did far better than the vast majority of people upending their lives to pan for specks in an unforgiving terrain. God, via Samuel, makes a similar argument against kings in 1 Samuel chapter 8. The whole chapter centers on a conflict between God and the people. They want a king. God knows that no king will truly do right by the people. By their nature, even good kings require things from the people that they rule. They need soldiers, resources for a royal household, and a material with which to wage war. Kings also have the legal and military power to take their cut off the top. People may prosper under a good king and suffer more under a bad one, but a king will always get theirs, as it says in 1 Samuel verses 16 through 18. "He will take your male and female slaves, and the best of your cattle and donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day." God paints a bleak but inevitably accurate picture. Even if we merely consider Saul, David, and Solomon, they did all of these things and then some. Saul sacrificed the lives of many good soldiers in his revenge quest against David. David deliberately mismanaged his own army in order to enter into a sexual relationship with one of his general's wives. Solomon's harem and various building projects hoovered up a tremendous amount of the nation's resources. And both David and Solomon rank on the good column of biblical kings. God's argument here proves even more prophetic as the generations marched onward. 1 Samuel forms part of the Deuteronomistic history, which begins with the story of the death of Moses and continues through Joshua, Judges, 1 and 2 Samuel, and 1 and 2 Kings. The Deuteronomistic historians carry the story of God's people from entering the Promised Land to the exile. Biblical scholars posit that this group started writing in the reigns of Josiah and Hezekiah, but don't complete their work until the exile. So, as 1 Samuel gets a final editorial pass by a Deuteronomistic historian sitting in Babylon, they would immediately call to mind the litany of truly terrible rulers that ran the lives of God's people. In fact, optimistically, the score stands at around 8 good kings and something like 30 bad ones, split across the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. On the good column, we have Asa, Jehoshaphat, Joshua, Amaziah, Azariah, Jotham, Hezekiah, Josiah. On the bad side, we have Rehoboam, Abijah, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Ataliah, Ahaziah, Manasseh, Amon, Jehoaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah, Jeroboam the First, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, Omiri, Ahab, Azahiah, Jehoram, Jehu, Jehoaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam the Second, Zechariah, Shalom, Menahem, Pekahiah, and Hoshea. By 722 BC, the Assyrians take out Israel. By 586 BC, the Babylonians carry the majority of Judah into exile, knocking over the temple in the process. The Deuteronomistic historians lay a lot of the blame for these two tragedies at the feet of awful and selfish leadership who could not rule in a godly way. I suspect that we all now feel the urge to pat ourselves on the back and celebrate that this whole way of existence passed away millennia ago. It's not actually true. Maybe the biblical kings possessed particularly poor character, but even the good kings did a lot of what God warned about. Humans, even ones with excellent character, struggle to entirely eliminate their own self-interest. To introduce a human into the pathway between God's will and your life opens up the possibility for human selfishness to creep into what should be a perfect system. Churches, like ancient nations, need leaders. And the nature of that leadership means that they take on the role of communicating God's will to God's people. Pastors, priests, bishops, district superintendents, popes, etc., each count as a fallible person inserted into your relationship with God's will for you and for the people around you. I suspect that we have a better hit rate than the descendants of David, but the history of Christianity, even modern Christianity, serves as a stark reminder of the ways our own self-interest shows up. It's God's will that I become the earthly ruler of the world. It's God's will that we conquer that country, drive out its inhabitants, and steal all their treasures. It's God's will that the church buy me an absurd amount of designer clothes. It's God's will that I have the fanciest private jet imaginable. It's God's will that you enter into a more personal relationship with me. It's God's will that we all work to cover up my crimes against church members, because if it came out, that would hurt the church. Pastors speak those lines, or some version of them, all the time. We bear witness to the wreckage, people damaged, churches destroyed, our reputation as a faith put through the paper shredder. The major streaming services created a whole industry around church gone wrong, tell-all documentaries that often boil down to a pastor declaring their wrongdoing the will of the divine and getting away with it for an illogical amount of time. I do believe that we've got the biblical kings beat, but pastors don't always live up to the trust placed in their hands either. We get ours and leave congregations high and dry. Clergy need to do their own spiritual work to perpetually seek God and push away our own selfishness. However, congregations have a role here as well. Pay attention. Do your own discerning. Ask questions. Show up. Recognize your role in holding clergy accountable and maintaining the health of the church. This isn't an argument against leaders, but when leadership interacts with communicating God's will, everyone needs to work together so we don't end up like Ahab, Jeroboam, Jeroboam II, or any number of people named Ahaziah.